The glass hit the marble floor before anyone moved. The sound cut through the low hum of the fundraiser like a blade, sharp, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Champagne flutes stilled halfway to lips. The entire East Wing of the Beck Foundation's annual gala held its breath in that particular way expensive rooms did when something ugly was about to happen in public. No one bent to pick it up. Samantha Aura didn't move. She stood exactly where she had been standing, one hand relaxed at her side, the other holding her own glass steady, and looked down at the shattered crystal on the floor between her and the woman in the red dress. Then she looked up. Seojin's finger was already pointing. Long, manicured, aimed downward like a verdict. Pick that up. Now. The room didn't exhale. It compressed. Samantha looked at the finger. Looked at the glass. Looked back up at Seojin's face, the perfectly constructed confidence, the slight lift of the chin, the eyes that had already decided what Samantha was before she'd said a single word. She took her time with all of it. Then she smiled. Small. Controlled. The kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes because it wasn't meant to. I'm sorry. Her voice was even. Unhurried. Are you talking to me? Seojin's chin lifted higher. You heard me. I heard you. Samantha nodded slowly. I just want to make sure I understand exactly what's happening right now. Because you're pointing at a glass that you dropped a brief pause, precise as a scalpel and giving me instructions. And I want to be certain that's actually what's happening before I respond to it. Something flickered behind Seojin's eyes. Not embarrassment. Not yet. Just the first small recognition that this was not going the way she'd planned. Don't make this complicated, Seojin said. Her voice dropped, still loud enough for the nearest cluster of guests to hear, but pitched now to sound like she was being patient with someone slow. Just pick it up. Samantha tilted her head slightly. No. I don't think you understand who you're talking to. Excuse me. I think, Samantha continued, unhurried, that you walked over here with something in mind. And I think the glass was an accident, another pause, but the finger wasn't. And I think you're used to that working. She looked at Seojin steadily. It doesn't work on me. The red dress shifted. Seojin stepped forward, close enough now that it was no longer a conversation, but a confrontation, the kind designed to make the other person step back. Samantha didn't step back. She didn't move at all. She simply held her ground with the same stillness she held in an operating room when everything was going wrong and panic was the one thing she couldn't afford. Then the room changed. People moved before they realized they were moving. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't a word. It was a shift in pressure, the way a space reorganized itself around a presence that commanded it without asking. Samantha felt it before she saw it. The guests nearest to them found reasons to create distance. The two men who had been standing by the pillar 12 feet away straightened almost imperceptibly. Baek Ji-young moved through the room like he owned it. Because he did. He crossed the floor in a straight line, no detours, no acknowledgement of the dozens of people who turned as he passed. His eyes were fixed on one point. He stopped beside Samantha, not in front of her, not behind her, beside her, and looked at the glass on the floor. Then he looked at Seojin. The quiet that followed was not empty. It was full of something cold and absolute. How dare you, he said, speak to my woman like that. Seojin's face cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. Ji-young. Not here. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Not ever again. If you want to see what happens next, what Baek Ji-young does to the woman who put his surgeon in danger, and how Samantha Aura handles a man who just claimed her in front of a room full of witnesses, stay right here. This story is just getting started. And subscribe if it's your first time. 6 weeks before the gala, Samantha Aura had not been thinking about anything except the man on the table in front of her. 2:13 a.m. Trauma Bay 3. The call had come in while she was finishing notes on a previous case, blunt force trauma, internal bleeding, critical. She was gloved before they wheeled him through the doors. She didn't look at his face. She looked at his chart, his vitals, the information that mattered. He was losing blood faster than they could replace it. The damage was specific, layered, the kind that came from violence that knew exactly what it was doing. She registered this the way she registered all clinical information, as data, not as a story. She would not know his story for weeks. In this moment, he was a patient, and she was a surgeon, and the only relevant fact was that he was still alive, and she intended to keep him that way. 3 hours and 14 minutes later, she walked out of the OR, pulled her mask down, and told the waiting resident that he was stable. Then she went to write her notes and moved to the next thing, the way she always did. She didn't see the men in the corridor. 4 of them, positioned with the particular stillness of people trained to be unobtrusive in spaces where they didn't belong. They had been there since the ambulance arrived. They watched her walk past without looking at them and said nothing to each other. One of them made a call. Short. 2 sentences. He's alive. It was the woman doctor. She saved his life. She didn't even look at his face twice. That's what made him remember her. He woke up on the second day. Samantha was doing rounds, 3rd patient in, moving efficiently, clipboard in hand. She felt him watching before she reached his bed. It was a particular kind of attention, steady, unhurried, the kind that didn't drop when she looked up and caught it. You saved my life. His voice was rough from the intubation, but direct. No preamble. That's the job. She checked his chart. His vitals were good. Better than the initial prognosis had suggested. What's your name? She glanced up briefly. Dr. Aura. Your name. A beat. Something in the way he said it, not demanding, just specific, like the distinction mattered to him. Samantha. She moved on to the next patient. He watched her go. Over the following days, she became aware, gradually, the way you became aware of a shift in weather, that he was asking about her. Not intrusively. Not in a way that required her to address it. Just consistently. The nurses mentioned it with the particular tone nurses used when they found something interesting. Her resident said he'd asked about her specialty, her training, how long she'd been at the hospital. She filed it. Said nothing. Continued working. On the morning of his discharge, she was in the corridor reviewing labs when she heard him behind her. Dr. Aura. She turned. He was dressed, not in hospital clothes, in his own, which had appeared from somewhere overnight. Dark, well-cut, expensive in a way that didn't announce itself. He looked considerably better than any man had a right to look 4 days post-major surgery. She noted this and set it aside. Mr. Beck. I want to thank you. He said it without performance. Properly. You already did. I said the words. He held her gaze. That's not the same thing. Dinner. Wherever you want. Whenever you're free. She looked at him for a moment. Read him the way she read everything quickly, thoroughly, without showing the process. No entitlement in the ask. No assumption that the answer was already yes. Just a man who had decided what he wanted and was asking clearly for it. I'll think about it, she said. That's not a no. No, she agreed. It isn't. She went back to her labs. He left the hospital. But he left his number with the charge nurse, not pushed into Samantha's hand, not texted unsolicited. Just left. Available if she wanted it. She told herself she wasn't going to use it for 4 days. On the 5th day, she sent a text that said only, Thursday works. You pick the place. He responded in under a minute. I'll send a car at 7. She almost told him she had her own car. Decided against it. Dinner was at a restaurant with no sign outside and a menu that arrived without prices. He was already there when she arrived seated, not waiting with the performance of someone who wanted credit for being early. Just there. He stood when she approached the table. She registered that too. The conversation surprised her. He asked more than he talked. About her residency, about why surgery specifically, about what it felt like to make a decision in seconds that other people would deliberate for days. He listened to her answers with the focused attention of someone who was actually processing what she said rather than waiting for his turn to speak. She found herself talking more than she'd intended. He told her less. Not evasively, just sparingly. Enough to give her something real without giving her the performance version. He ran a foundation. He had interests across several industries. His family was old soul money transplanted to the city a generation back. He didn't elaborate. She didn't push. What she noticed was that nothing he said felt rehearsed. And nothing about the evening felt like a transaction. She let him put her in the car at the end of the night. At her building, she turned before getting out. This was good. Yes, he said. I have Saturday morning free. There's a coffee place near the hospital. Nothing like this. She gestured vaguely at the restaurant they'd come from. Just coffee. He looked at her. Something in his expression settled, like a question he hadn't asked yet had just been answered anyway. I'll be there. Saturday coffee was her idea and her terms. 40 minutes, a corner table, a place where she knew the staff and felt like herself. He arrived in a car that he left parked around the corner, which she didn't know until later. He ordered black coffee and didn't comment on anything about the place. He was just present. Fully, quietly present. She was testing something. She didn't tell him that. By the time the 40 minutes were up, she had extended it to 2 hours without deciding to. He called 4 days after the coffee. Not texted. Called. There's an event next Friday, he said. A fundraiser. Important people, formal, my world. I'd like you to come. Your world, she repeated. Yes. She waited for more. He didn't offer it. Just let the invitation sit, complete as it was. What do I wear? Whatever you want. A pause. You'll be the most impressive person in the room regardless. She said nothing for a moment. Then, I'll see you Friday. She didn't overdress. That was a choice, deliberate, unbothered. She wore something clean and structured, deep green, nothing that performed wealth, but nothing that apologized for her either. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman who knew who she was and didn't require a room's approval to confirm it. 6 weeks later, she walked into a room that already belonged to him. She just didn't know it yet. The venue was a converted heritage building, high ceilings, warm light, the kind of architecture that reminded you that serious money was old money. She gave her name at the door and was shown in without delay. She moved through the room with the ease of someone who had learned to exist in spaces that weren't designed for her and had long since stopped finding that remarkable. She was near the edge of the main hall, champagne in hand, taking the room in, when she felt him before she saw him. Baek Ji-young moved through the crowd and came directly to her. No stops. No detours. The room parted slightly as he moved, not dramatically, just naturally, the way rooms did around men who didn't need to ask for space. He reached her. Looked at her for exactly 1 second before he spoke. You came. I said I would. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. You look, he paused, exactly like yourself. She wasn't sure why that landed the way it did. Is that good? It's the best thing I could say. They stood together for a moment, easy, unhurried, and she felt the room recalibrating around them. Heads turning and turning away. The specific attention of people who monitored who Baek Ji-young stood next to. One set of eyes didn't turn away. Samantha didn't clock Seo-jin immediately. She clocked her eventually, red dress, the particular stillness of someone who has stopped pretending not to stare, and noted her without reacting. Ji-young was drawn into a conversation with 2 men who appeared at his elbow with the urgency of people who had been waiting for an opening. He excused himself briefly, a look at Samantha that said, I'll be right back, and she nodded and moved toward the edge of the room. Seo-jin crossed to her in under 30 seconds. Is this the upgrade? The smile was perfect. The eyes were not. A slow, deliberate look from Samantha's shoes to her face. Interesting choice. Even for him. Samantha looked at her. I'm sorry, do I know you? You don't. Seo-jin stepped closer. But I know him. Better than you do. Better than you will. That sounds like a personal problem, Samantha said pleasantly. The smile tightened. Seo-jin reached out. Whether to touch her arm or push past her was unclear, and Samantha shifted her weight without thought, the small automatic sidestep of someone who moved precisely and didn't telegraph it. Seo-jin's hand caught air. The momentum tilted her slightly. The champagne glass in her own hand swung and fell. The sound of it hitting the marble floor cut through everything. Every head nearby turned. Seo-jin looked down at the glass. Looked up at Samantha. And pointed. Pick up that glass. The rest, Samantha already knew. She had been in the room for it. She had stood her ground and kept her voice level and watched the woman in the red dress miscalculate her completely. She had felt the room shift before she saw him move. She had heard his voice cut through the silence with 4 words that rearranged something in her chest she hadn't expected. How dare you speak to my woman like that? And then, not here. Not ever again. Seo-jin's composure cracked. Just slightly. just enough for everyone standing close enough to see it. Ji-young turned from her without another word and looked at Samantha. A question in it. She gave him the smallest nod. He offered his arm. She took it. They walked out together. The room watched. Seo-jin stood alone beside the broken glass. In the car, Samantha sat with her hands in her lap and looked out at the city moving past the windows. Quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that followed something significant and didn't pretend otherwise. I'm sorry about that. His voice was lower in a small space. More present. She turned to look at him. You didn't do anything wrong. She had no right. She didn't. A pause. But I had it handled. He looked at her. That same expression from dinner, the one that arrived when something he'd suspected got confirmed. I know you did. The car moved through an intersection. Streetlights swept across the interior in slow intervals. Your woman, though. She raised an eyebrow. He didn't look away. Is that a problem? Samantha turned back to the window. Let the question sit. Let the city be loud in the silence between them. Ask me properly, she said, and we'll talk. He asked properly 3 days later. No grand gesture. No performance. He called her on a Tuesday evening while she was still in her office finishing post-op notes, and he said, I would like you to be with me. Officially. Completely. If you want that too. She put her pen down. Yes, she said. Simply. Without hesitation. The shift was quiet at first. They didn't announce themselves, he didn't post, she didn't perform. But he stopped concealing her. She appeared at his side at 2 smaller events over the following 2 weeks. His men, the ones who moved through his world with the particular efficiency of people who understood what loyalty actually meant, treated her with a specific kind of respect that had nothing to do with her relationship with their boss. She had saved him. In their world that carried its own weight, independent of everything else. Seo-jin noticed. She had been at the periphery since the gala, present in the way that wounded pride was always present, hovering just outside the edge of things. But now she started asking questions. Quietly. Through the kind of channels that people like her had access to, old contacts, social connections, the information networks that moved through certain circles like water through stone. What she found made her go still. Not a woman he'd picked up at an event. Not someone temporary and replaceable. A surgeon. Board certified, decorated, published in 3 journals, the woman who had kept Baek Ji-young's heart beating on a table at 2:47 a.m. 6 weeks ago. Seo-jin sat with this information for a long time. She reconstructed the timeline. The hospital. The recovery. The way he had looked at Samantha across that gala room before he'd even reached her. This woman was not temporary. She was woven into his story now in a way that Seo-jin had never been, not in the years she'd spent at his side, not in everything she'd done to hold that position. She decided Samantha's aura needed to be removed. Before Seo-jin could act, he found out she'd been asking around. He called her. She picked up on the second ring, which told him she'd been waiting for the call, which told him everything he needed to know about where her head was. Ji-young. Listen carefully. His voice was the same quiet it always was. The particular quiet that meant the conversation was already over and she was just catching up. We are done. We have been done for a long time. Whatever you are building in your head right now, stop. You are embarrassing yourself and you are testing something you do not want to test. A pause. Deliberate. Do not go near her. Do not ask about her. Do not look in her direction. This is the last time I will say this to you. Silence on the line. He took it for understanding. It wasn't. He took Samantha to meet his parents on a Sunday evening 3 weeks after they made things official. The house was not what she expected, not a compound, not a fortress. Just a large, warm home in a quiet part of the city, the kind of place that had been lived in for decades and showed it in the best way. His mother met them at the door. Small, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who had made 1,000 assessments in her life and had gotten very good at it. Dinner was formal in structure and genuine in feeling. His mother asked real questions, not the polished social questions of someone performing interest, but the direct, specific questions of someone who actually wanted to know. About medicine, about what drew Samantha to surgery, about where she was from and where she'd trained and what she wanted. Samantha answered without performing. Straight, warm, completely herself. His father said less, watched more. Midway through the main course, he said something to Ji-young in Korean, briefly, without looking up from his plate. Ji-young didn't respond, but something in his posture shifted, the almost imperceptible relaxation of a man who had received the answer he wanted. At the door, as they were leaving, his mother held Samantha's hand in both of hers. She was small enough that she had to look up slightly to hold Samantha's eyes. "Come back," she said. Not an invitation. A request. In the car on the way home, Samantha looked out the window at the dark city and felt something unfamiliar sitting in her chest. Something warm and slightly terrifying. She didn't name it. She let it sit. She was still smiling when she got to her front door. She didn't notice until she was already inside. 3 days later, she was driving home from a double shift. It was late past midnight, the roads quiet, the kind of tired that settled into your bones after 16 hours on your feet making decisions that mattered. She had the window cracked, the radio low. She was thinking about nothing in particular, which was rare enough that she noticed it. She noticed the cars at the same moment she noticed she was being boxed in. One ahead, one behind. Moving in coordination, slowing as she slowed, closing the gap with the particular patience of people who had done this before. Her hands tightened on the wheel. Her mind went still and fast the way it did in trauma situations, not calm exactly, but clarified. All noise removed. Just information and options. She assessed. 2 cars. At least 2 people per vehicle. The road ahead curved left in approximately 40 meters. The shoulder on the right was wider than standard construction access. She'd driven this route enough times to know it. She made her decision in under 3 seconds. She didn't slow down. She accelerated. The car ahead hadn't expected that. She was on its bumper before the driver could recalibrate close enough that pulling left meant contact, and the instinct to avoid contact bought her exactly the fraction of a second she needed. She swung right, hit the construction shoulder at speed, felt the car shudder over uneven ground, kept the wheel steady, and came back onto the road on the other side of the gap they'd left between the 2 vehicles. The car behind overshot. The car ahead braked too late. By the time either of them had turned around, she was 3 blocks gone. She pulled over 2 streets from her building, put the car in park, sat in the silence for a moment with her hands on the wheel, steady, and breathed. Then she picked up her phone and called him. He answered before the second ring. "Samantha." "I'm fine," she said first. "I need to tell you something." He was on her street before she finished the call. She didn't ask how. She was beginning to understand that Baek Ji-young moved through the city on different terms than most people, that the infrastructure of his world was invisible until it wasn't, and then it was everywhere all at once. He pulled up beside her car and got out, crossed to her door, opened it, not urgently, but immediately, and looked at her. Took her hands, checked them, looked at her face, her eyes, the way a person checked someone they couldn't afford to lose. When he was satisfied she was unhurt, he stepped back. His expression had not changed. That was the thing about him that she was still learning, that the stillness of his face was not the absence of feeling. It was the discipline of a man who had long ago learned that feelings were information, not instruction. He made one call. Short. 3 sentences in Korean. Then he put the phone away. "Go inside," he said. "I'll handle it." She looked at him. "I know you will." A pause. "But I handled it first." Something moved across his face then, that expression she'd seen at dinner, at the gala, in the car. The one that arrived when she confirmed something he'd already known. This time it stayed longer. "Yes," he said quietly. "You did." He didn't need long. His world moved fast when he decided it should, and he had decided. Within 48 hours he knew it was Seojin. Not suspected. Knew, with the kind of certainty that came from resources and networks and the particular efficiency of men who understood that their boss's patience had a floor, and they had just watched someone find it. He handled it the way he handled everything that required permanence. Not with noise. Not with spectacle. With the specific, thorough, irreversible removal of everything that had made Seojin's life comfortable. The business connections that ran through his network, severed. The introductions, the endorsements, the quiet word of mouth that had opened doors for her across the city, retracted. The apartment that his money had touched through intermediaries, gone. The social access that his name had provided, the invitations that had come because people knew she moved in his circles, revoked. She was not destroyed publicly. She was simply excised. Removed from his world so completely and so quietly that within 2 weeks it was as if she had never been in it. He sent her one final message. Not through intermediaries. Directly. You were warned. What you had is gone. If she is ever uncomfortable again, for any reason, in any form, you will not receive another message. You will simply be gone. Leave the city. Seojin left the city within the week. He came to Samantha the evening after it was done. No agenda. No announcement. He just appeared at her door at 7 in the evening with food from a place she'd mentioned once in passing and sat with her at her kitchen table while the city went dark outside her window. They talked for a long time. About the hospital. About that night 6 weeks ago, what he had thought in recovery, lying in a bed in a building full of people he didn't know, understanding for the first time in a long time that he was not untouchable. About what it felt like to wake up and find out that a stranger had spent 3 hours keeping him alive because that was simply what she did. She listened to all of it. Let him say the things he had not said before. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. You could have just sent flowers, she said. He laughed. A real laugh, not the controlled social version she'd seen at the fundraiser, not the polite version from dinner. A real one that started somewhere genuine and came out whole. She decided right then that she wanted to keep hearing it. They stayed at that table until past midnight. No event, no audience, no performance. Just two people who had chosen each other without quite planning to, and had meant it completely once they did. The wedding was not small. His world didn't do small, and by the time they reached the day, neither of them wanted it to be. They wanted the people they loved in the room. They wanted it to feel like what it was: real, permanent, chosen. His mother cried before the ceremony started. His father sat beside her with his hand over hers and said nothing because nothing needed to be said. Her family filled the left side of the room with the particular warmth of people who had watched. Samantha Aura moved through the world on her own terms for years and were profoundly, quietly glad she had found someone who understood what that meant. She walked in wearing something that made the room go still. He was already at the altar. He watched her come down the aisle the same way he had crossed the floor of the gala, like nothing else in the space existed. Like the room was incidental and she was the only fixed point in it. When she reached him, he didn't say anything for a moment. Just looked at her. Let the fact of her standing in front of him be the thing it was. Then he leaned close, before the officiant began, before the vows, before any of the formal words that would make this official. You still had it handled, he said quietly. Didn't you? Samantha looked straight ahead. At the officiant, at the flowers, at the room full of people who loved them. The smile came slow and stayed. Always, she said. Be honest, when she said, ask me properly, did you already know how this was going to end? Let's see your answer in the comments. And if this story moved you, if Samantha and Ji Young's story is one you want to see more of, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. There are more stories like this one waiting for you right here.